Hello, welcome to more yoga with me, Emily. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're doing well and ready to get into the posterior chain, but most specifically, the hamstrings. Mine have been wicked tight lately, so this is my gift for you. A class for hamstrings. Also, often when we get into hamstrings, I want to do a little bit of counter stretch on the front side, so for hip flexors, and usually when we get into hamstrings, we end up getting into the glutes as well. So there you go. As always, I like to have some props handy, things that can bring the floor up to you, particularly for the hamstring stretch. If you don't have anything, although I guarantee you have something like water bottles or paper towel rolls, like in our one of our last classes, um, then maybe set up close to a wall and give yourself a little bit of balance. And then the other thing that you'll need, if you have it, is a strap or a belt or something like that. And if you don't have it, don't worry, I can give you options for that one. I can give you options for all of all of them. Yeah, I think that's all I need to say. All right, let's start lying down and have your strap handy if you have one. And I did say set up next to a wall, but you're going to need a little bit of space if you are right next to a wall to start with. Anyway, here we go. Oh, some days I am better at speaking than others. All right. So, depending on how your day has been so far, you might need to get some wiggles out or, you know, take some time to really settle your body on the mat. You might need a big yawn or a little fidget, and then start to find a place where your body can be comfy on the mat. So you might have your legs bent, you might have them straight, you could have your arms out to the side. Sometimes it feels really nice to rest your belly or rest your hands on your belly or on your chest. Excuse me. And then once you've found a position that you feel like you can maintain for a couple minutes, then inhale through your nose. Exhale, big sigh of your breath away. All right, two more just like that. And then continue breathing however you need to, whether it's in and out through your nose or your mouth. And then notice how your breath is flowing, whether it's deep or shallow. Maybe it's smooth, maybe it's choppy. And simply notice. And in fact, even that task or that fact of noticing the breath, of observing it, will tend to slow the breath down and smooth it out anyway. Excuse me, my goodness, without having to alter your breath in any way. Maybe you have to clear your throat. That's cool too. And it's really tempting to want to deepen the breath here. Right? We feel like, oh, it's yoga. I've got to go for a deep, slow breath. And you don't need to do that. Just try if you can. And it's hard, but to breathe naturally. The last couple breaths here. And then when you feel ready, start to bring that little bit of movement back into your body. Maybe a big yawning stretch, or maybe just a very simple wiggle of the fingertips or toes until you feel ready to draw your knees in toward your chest and take a little rock from side to side. I'm going to have one more cough here and see if that clears it. Take one hand to each knee and start to draw circles with your thigh bones and your hip sockets here. Maybe going in the same direction as each other, maybe in opposite directions. Maybe a little rock from side to side. And then come back to center. All right, keep your knees bent, plant your feet. So we're setting up for a bridge pose. Feet can be ideally hip width apart and close enough into your bum that you can tickle your heels with your fingertips. If your feet are mat width apart, that is too wide. So check, right? I've set up for bridge millions of times probably in my life, and yet I still every single time check to make sure that my feet are set up where they should be. All right, and then pressing your heels into the floor, especially inhale, start to lift the pelvis and spine up and away, and exhale, slowly lower back down. So a few more of these. Inhale to lift, exhale to lower back down. And then notice, if your knees are winging out to the side as you lift up, gosh, even demonstrating that, it feels awkward. It's because your glutes maybe aren't activating as much as they could. So one way to counteract that is to imagine that you're trying to scrub your heels away from you. And that will draw your thigh bones back into neutral while working the glutes. Right? So the knees aren't ever going to touch here in bridge, but you also don't want them winging out to the side. It's just hard on the low back, right? It puts a lot of pressure on those extensors. All right. And then come back down to the earth. You might pause in stillness or take a little wiggle. And then we're going to do that again. So first option is just up and down in your normal bridge. Otherwise, join me, shift your right foot forward or away from you, let's say slightly. And then you might even choose to come up onto your heels here, and then inhale, lift the pelvis and spine up and down. And then exhale, lower them back down to the floor. Bring your right foot back into place, and then shift your left foot forward a little bit. And then inhale, lift. So essentially doing a staggered stance with the feet while working bridge pose. And you might be up on your heels, you might still just be down on the soles of the feet. But each time you lift up, I want the opposite foot to come forward slightly. Now, the other thing that you can do, if you wish, is to walk both feet quite a bit forward and then start to stagger the stance. This time you will need to be up on your heels, and then you're really going to start to target the hamstrings, right? The backs of the legs as you lift up here. So a few more, whether you're just doing, not just, but doing the basic bridge up and down, or maybe you're playing with a staggered stance, or maybe you're doing a staggered stance with the feet further away from you. I'm going to do one more each side because that way for me, I will be balanced or even on both sides. All right, and then come back down to the mat. Draw your knees into your chest. Take a little rock from side to side. And then grab your strap if you have it. If you don't worry about it. And then bring it over the balls of both feet as you reach your legs up to the sky. Okay, I don't care how straight your legs are here. They can be deeply bent, right? And they might be on a different angle, further away from your body. They might be closer. I want you to go wherever you can go without feeling that sort of trembling in the legs. Right? If you feel that kind of shaking, you have to back out of the angle of the stretch because then you're not getting the benefit. Okay, so wherever you are, flex your toes back toward your face. And I really like to walk my hands as far up the straps as I can get them so that I can just use the weight of my arms here to get into the hamstrings. I don't have to like bend my elbows and pull. It's not that it's lazy. I just call it efficient. Okay, and then hug your legs toward each other. Again, your knees can be deeply bent here. You're still getting your hamstrings, right? It's just closer towards the origin point up at the sit bones than it is the insertion at the knees. All right, and then think of pressing your low back into the floor. So naturally, as you do that, you might feel your tailbone lift up a little bit from the earth. And then maybe you start to curl your upper body up off the earth as well. Keep the back of the neck long so you're not rounding through the cervical spine. Maybe you draw your legs toward you a little bit more. If you don't have a strap, I should have said the whole time, you could be holding onto the back of the calves or the back of your thighs. And then slowly lower it down to the earth. Okay, so that's kind of a little bit more of an active variation of a hamstring release. We'll get into a more passive one at the end. From here, grab the backs of the thighs. Maybe you rock and roll up and down your spine. If you try it out once and think, yo, that's not for me, then don't do it. Roll to one side, press yourself up, and we'll meet on hands and knees. So eventually setting up now with your knees underneath your hips. Toes can be tucked or untucked. And then hands outer shoulder width apart or wider. Fingers spread nice and wide, right? You want to really grip the mat with those finger pads. Helps protect your wrists anytime you're bearing weight on your hands. And let's start to move through cat and cow. So inhale, lift the tailbone, hollow through the lower back, broaden through the collarbones. Oh, that might feel good on your abs if you've done some core recently. And then exhale, tuck your tailbone under, round through the spine. Really press the floor away from you. And then inhale, dip into cow. Exhale, round into cat. So a few more of these on your own time, on your own breath. And as always, if there's any other natural movement here that would feel good, feel free to add on. Sometimes I like to do that little wag of the tail from side to side. Maybe you send your hips further back toward your heels, releasing into the lumbar spine. Maybe you do big barrel rolls through your chest or shoulders. And then come back to center. All right. From here on your inhale, step or sweep the right foot forward. So we're going to come up to half kneeling. You can bring a little bit of padding here underneath your left knee if you have it. And then this is a great place to be next to the wall if you need a little bit more stability. So one hand on the wall, or maybe both hands on your hips. And then before we get into the stretch, you're going to back out of the hips to start with. Hug the legs toward each other. Really squeeze the bum on the back leg. Belly band to spine, shoulder blades on the back. Maintain all that. And then shift forward into the front knee. So now you want maybe a hand on the wall or on hips or maybe on blocks. Or you might just rest your palms on the front thigh. Really squeeze your bum on the back leg though. So we're getting into those hip flexors. And it's simply because I really like to get, if we're really focusing on just the hamstrings, you want to get a release through the front as well, because a lot of what we do to get into the hamstrings causes tension here. So it's just that little bit of balance. You might press your palms forward to send your torso back, getting even deeper into those hip flexors. All right, on your exhale, shift your hips back as you extend through your front leg for half splits. If you have a deeper variation of splits, feel free to slide out. But if you always slide out, then maybe back out of it and try half splits with me here. Again, you might have hands on wall or hands on hips or on blocks. And then you can see, maybe you can't, but my front leg isn't straight. This is straight. That's locked out, so don't lock out. Straight is okay, but a micro bend or even a deeper bend in the knee is going to help really release tension in the lumbar spine, as well as getting into the hamstrings. Okay, think of wrapping the outer left hip forward as you draw the outer right hip back. So now we're really getting into those hamstrings, right? And then you could play with pointing and flexing those front toes. It might feel like, if you're getting more sensation with the toes pointed in the front of the leg, then stay there. Generally, most of us are going to get most tension with the toes peeled back, right? Getting into the calves. And the cool thing about releasing into the calf muscles is it can help release tension into the hamstrings too, right? Because they both connect behind the knee. So if you're here with me, flare the toes on that front foot, peel them back toward your face even more. And then can you imagine that you're trying to drag your front heel back toward you? Like maybe just a millimeter. Your heel might not actually move. And then the last couple breaths, maybe think of squeezing the top of the thigh on that front leg to actively open the back of the knee. Ooh, okay, it's pretty deep. Slowly rock forward, back into that front foot, and then plant your hands, sweep your right knee underneath you, little wiggle or shake or cat and cow. And then let's do that on the opposite side. So if you're using padding, bring it underneath your right knee, and then step or sweep your left foot forward. It might be wobbly. And then again, back out of the hips to start with. Hug the legs toward each other. Really squeeze the bum on the back leg. Belly bend to spine, shoulder blades on the back. Maintain all that as you start to shift forward into that front knee. All right, really squeeze the bum on the back leg. Again, hands can be wherever. I really like to rest them on the front thigh. By all means, if you want to go into the more yoga variation, you're welcome to float your arms up to the sky. But sometimes that little press of the palms forward can help get more extension on that back hip. And then squeeze the bum, keep squeezing the bum on that back leg, right? It's sneaky and it likes to release the tension. Last breath here. All right, and as you exhale, start to shift your hips back and extend through the front leg for half split. So this is where you might want to use the wall or hands on hips or blocks or any sort of props that you might have. And then go ahead and point and flex the toes on that front foot, kind of giving yourself a little heel massage as you do this. And then find a variation that works for you, whether the toes are peeled back or pointed, and then start to wrap the outer right hip forward as you draw the outer left hip back. Often what I see is this front hip kind of, or that left hip lifting up and the leg reaching forward. It's almost like you're trying to wrap the hip back and almost kind of socket that femur back into the hip socket. Right, little micro bend or even a deep bend on that front knee. Particularly if you're not by a wall, you've got your hands on hips, you're feeling wobbly, you don't have blocks, bend your knee even more so that you can bring your fingertips to the floor to give yourself stability. All right, think of dragging the front heel back toward you. Maybe think of squeezing the front of the thigh, the top of the thigh on that front leg. Holy moly. All right, slowly inhale. Rock forward again. Plant your hands. Swing your left knee underneath you. A little wiggle or shake or cat and cow. And then take your knees wide. Sit your hips back for child's pose, just for a few breaths, just to give your hamstrings a little bit of a break. You could prop your hands underneath your forehead like I've done, or you might rest your forehead to the floor, or you might wrap your arms around you. Go wherever feels best. All right. And then press yourself up. Shift your hips on one side. Swing your legs forward so you can come to a seated position. Shake out your legs a little bit. You might do lean back in the hands, do a little windshield wiper of the legs. That kind of always feels like a nice massage for the butt. the glutes, the glutes. All right. And then this is a great place to sit up on something, right? Even something as high as a chip foam block. Maybe you have a folded up towel. It helps tilt the pelvis forward, particularly if sitting here feels like it's a lot, right? Now, similar thing to what we did at the start. Hug the legs toward each other. Knees can be bent, right? They don't need to be totally straight here. And if you have a strap, you might bring them to the balls of your feet. Now, I just realized my feet might be out of the frame of the camera, so I'm going to spin around so that you can definitely see. All right. And then again, make sure your knees aren't locked out, right? Your heels shouldn't be up off the floor. And there can be a deeper bend here, right? Just sitting here with that tall spine and the feedback of the strap, if you have it. If you don't have it, then it's fine. Just sit with a long spine. Can be enough on those hamstrings. I hear you. I feel you, right? Maybe just sitting up. You can use a little support of your fingertips behind you. Sometimes that'll tilt you forward, getting a slightly deeper stretch here. Now, if you've got straps, or even if you don't, and you feel like you'd like to come forward, wrap your shoulder blades onto your back to start, and then start to hinge at the hips so the spine stays long. You might walk your hands further down the strap, and if that feels okay on your low back, then maybe you start to round. Right? Maybe you don't have a strap, maybe you just have a grab of the toes or the feet or the ankles. You're welcome to round here, but it's, as soon as you feel like you're generating tension on the lumbar spine, and back out of it. Now you can see I leave quite a bit of bend in my knees, and it's because they naturally hyperextend, and I don't want to stretch my legs in hyperextension. It feels super gnarly on my joints. Last couple breaths here. All right, and then slowly back out of the depth. Bring your hands behind you, bend your knees. Maybe take that little windshield wiper up the legs, or even just a shake out. All right. And again, if you have a strap, make sure it's handy, it's nearby. And then plant your feet, tuck your tailbone under, start to roll down to the mat. You can always use the support of your hands behind the thighs, or you might walk yourself down, or you might just flop on back, and that's cool too. And then eventually, when you come down to the mat, hug your knees toward you and take a little rock from side to side. All right, grab your strap if you have it. If you don't, then just match the movements without the strap. So bend your left knee and bring the strap on the balls of the right foot. And then start to reach your right leg up to the sky. Now again, your knee can be bent here, particularly if you feel that sort of trembling. Bend your knee a little bit more, or back out on the depth of the angle, right? Then peel your toes back toward your face. Press the sole of the foot up to the sky, right? It's as if you're trying to stand on the ceiling. And again, I like to walk my hands up the strap so that I don't have to bend my elbows and use that strength. If you don't have a strap, you can maybe grab the back of your thigh or your calf, or maybe your ankle or your foot. So a couple more breaths here. You have the option of extending the left leg along the floor. That will deepen this. So you might need to back out of the angle a little bit more on that right leg. The thing I like about the strap here is it kind of helps pull that femur back down, right? Rather than reaching it away from the body. Kind of just helps reset the alignment and the posture here. All right, take both of the straps into your right hand. So same hand as leg, left arm out to the side. And then again, you can be deeply bent here. I'm gonna have to, because otherwise I'll knock over my bookshelf. And then take your leg out to the right. Now you can always bend the left knee and let it hang out to the side as well. And then you kind of create this little sling or hammock move. If you're all the way out to the right, maybe your elbow is reaching the floor, you can start to use your forearm strength to curl your leg up closer towards your shoulder. So my knee is deeply bent. I'm doing more like half happy baby, but you want to mostly be feeling this in the adductors and the hamstrings on that right side. And again, because I didn't leave myself enough space. All right. And then slowly come back to center. And now you're going to take both those straps into the opposite hand. So left hand has the straps. If you're using a strap, right arm out to the side. And then cross the center line of the body. But you want your right hip to stay flat on the floor. You can even take your right thumb crease, hook it into the hip. Take your right thumb, hook it into the right hip crease as a reminder to wrap that outer right hip down and to the floor. Right, so now we're getting the outer thigh on that right side. Still hamstrings, but also the muscles that attach the IT band. Again, the knee can be deeply bent here, but it's not a twist, right? The whole of your spine is on the mat. Your pelvis is on the mat. All right. And then come back to center. Last couple breaths in the middle. Whether or not you have a strap, maybe you bring that leg closer toward you. You don't need to. Honestly, it's all good. But really getting into those hamstrings. All right. And then slowly, gently release. You might want to shake out that right leg or just take a couple moments with the knee bent. It's intense. And I usually like to do a little bit more warming up before we go into those, but there you have it. All right, let's switch sides. So start with the right knee bent, foot on the floor, and then bring the strap to the balls of the left foot. And again, you might reach your leg up to the sky. And you could be deeply bent, right? It doesn't need to be straight here at all. Maybe it is straight, maybe it's on a much more obtuse angle than an acute one. Wherever you are, though, peel the toes toward your face, reach the sole of the foot away from you, whether that's up to the sky or to the bottom edge of your mat. Again, you might choose to stay here. Some of you might extend the right leg along the floor. If so, keep it active. For me, that just feels like it's a lot, so I'm going to back out of that. And then eventually, your muscles will start to lengthen and relax a little bit. Maybe you draw the leg closer toward you. You don't have to. If you don't have a strap, then of course you can just gently grab the back of the leg. All right, take both of the straps, if you're using them, into the same hand as the leg that's up. So left hand, right arm out to the side, and then take your leg out to the left. Again, if your right knee is bent, you could let it wing out to the right, so you get that sort of sling or hammock. Maybe your right leg is extended. And if your left elbow reaches the floor, again, you can use the strength of the arm to start to pull your left leg sort of back to the back left corner of the room a little bit more. Knee can be deeply, deeply bent, right? It does not need to be straight here. Last couple breaths. And then slowly draw that leg back to center. Bring both straps into your right hand now. Take your left thumb, hook it into that hip crease on the left side, and then draw your leg just across the center line. So it's almost like you're trying to pull or draw your foot to the back right corner of the mat, not even the room, right? You want the whole flat bit of pelvis on the left side to be on the earth, right? It's not a twist. It's just a drawing of the leg across the center line. Again, you can be deeply bent here, or it can be further away. It does not need to be straight. All right, and then last couple breaths in the center. Maybe you draw that leg a bit closer toward you. Again, you don't need to. That's fine. And then slowly, gently release, ditch the strap. Maybe you take a little rock from side to side with those legs, or plant your feet and take a little windshield wiper. And then start to make your way into your final resting pose, which could be flat on your back, legs bent or straight in Shavasana. Maybe you choose to rest on your side or child's pose or even legs up the wall. Might feel really good, even though we were just essentially doing that in the middle of the air. And there's no rush to find your final resting position, but once you are there, for 3 breaths, inhale through your nose and exhale, sigh your breath away. A couple more. With each exhale, let your body melt a little bit deeper into the earth. Let go of the breath control. Return to your natural breath. And let go of any last muscle gripping or tension. And thoughts may come and go. Acknowledge them without judgment, but let them go. And let them drift by you like leaves on the wind. And stay here longer if you can, 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you so much for joining me today. Namaste.